All right, so here I've launched Compressor and things look pretty clean and empty. If your compressor interface doesn't look like this, then just make sure that your sidebars are closed here on the left and on the right. And in this very simple view, you have the batch window down here, which is where you add the files that you want to compress. And then you have the preview window up here, which is where you view and play the files that you want to compress. If I do show the sidebar on the left, you can see that here I have my settings and my locations. Under settings is where I can choose various presets that I can use to compress my video files. Up here at the top are my actions. So these define various actions to take, things like creating Blu-ray and DVDs and also publishing to various video platforms. And then down here are the categories that house various presets. So as I twirl these down, you can see that I have all sorts of different presets that I can add to my video files when I compress them. I can either use them straight out or I can modify them further, and we'll talk all about that in a little bit. I also have a space down here called Custom, and this is where I can make and save out my own custom presets, and again, we'll take a look at that in a little bit as well. And then under Locations is where I define the location where I want my exported file to go. Again, I just have some default options, and then I can also define custom locations as well. So we'll get back to that. Now, over here on the right is the inspector. And if you've taken the rest of this course, you know what the inspector is. It's where you look at information and also change characteristics about the file. Right now, I don't see anything because I don't have anything chosen. There's nothing to inspect. But for example, I can choose any of the settings over here. I'll just scroll down ProRes and then click on Apple ProRes 422. And then you can see that I have 3 tabs, General, and I have some information I can look at. And then here's my Video tab and my Audio tab. Now, notice that it's all grayed out. I'm just inspecting an actual setting, so it's all baked in. When we start to add these settings to actual video files, we can, of course, come in and change these. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to bring in a file. There are a couple of ways that you can do this. Probably the simplest way is to just drag and drop. I have a couple of files here that I exported from the previous chapter on sharing and exporting. Really, you can use any video files at all that you like. But again, I just have these 3 files here and we'll send them through the meat grinder multiple times throughout this chapter. So let's just grab this montage and we'll drag and drop it right into the batch window. All right, so you see here that I've got my file and it's ready for me to add a compression setting. Sticking with the drag and drop philosophy, one way you can do that is to just drag and drop it right on top. And so now you see that I have my montage and I have my Apple ProRes 422 compression applied to that. I'm actually going to drag one more setting over here as well so that we can see a few things. I'm also going to get the video podcasting preset and drag that on as well. I want to make sure to drag it onto the job, not on top of the setting. This will replace it, not what I want to do, but we want to drag it to the job. And so I've actually replaced it. So we'll add that Apple ProRes 422 back on and drop it on the job. Now you see that I have both, okay? Now you see that when I do that, the name of the file is the name of the file, and then it's appended with the compression setting, okay? And then you see that the default location, at least in this case, is source, okay? So the exported file is going to go to the same location that I got my Project Reload montage file from. I can change that by just going up to locations, and let's say that I want to change that to the desktop. I'm going to drag and drop again. If I just drag and drop to the individual setting, it's just going to replace that setting only. It's going to leave the others alone. But if I drag and drop it to the job, it will replace everything within that job, like so. Also notice that when I add a file and a setting, I can use the viewer to see the visual output. I'm just going to bring it to the middle here, okay? And then what we have here is sort of a before and after. So this is the original file, and this is the file once it's been compressed. Not really a huge difference on this one, but let's go to the video podcasting file. If I select this, you can see that my video tab shows me that this is only going to be 640 by 480 pixels. Okay, so we should see some difference in the quality between the original file and the compressed file. So you can see that it is visually softer. Okay. Now, I also have some other navigation controls, which we'll look at in a little bit. And then you can also set in and out points here as well. So you can either drag your triangles like so, or you can do the same thing in Final Cut. You can just set an in by pressing I and an out by pressing O. All right, so we've been able to get a little bit more specific with our settings and location tab, as well as the batch window and the viewer. But let's talk a little bit more about what we can do with the inspector. So there are various ways that I can use the inspector. Right now, this one instance has 3 levels that I can look at. I can look at the batch, and I'm going to click up here. And you can see that the inspector says batch, and this is the highest level. It's going to include all the files within the batch window, and I can get a sense of what that is. I have 1 job and 2 outputs. So that should give you a sense of the other levels that I can look at in the inspector. The next level is the job. So I'll select the second level here, and now I'm looking at the job. And this is going to tell me information about the source file itself. So this file that I'm actually compressing, I get to see the information about it here. And then the third level are my outputs or my settings. Okay, so as I select my H.264 for video podcasting output, you can see that I have 3 tabs. My general tab gives me information. My video tab gives me the video information and allows me to come in and change anything that I'd like. Frankly, this is where you will be most of the time because it's here that you'll dig in and just change those video and audio characteristics of the presets that you started with. Here are some terms that should look familiar from the previous movie when we were talking about the various video properties that you can change, things like frame size and frame rate and bit rate and so on. So I'll just make a small change. Let's change the frame size to 960 by 540, and we'll change the bit rate to 1200. All right, so I've changed the settings for this individual setting on this file only. I did not change the original setting for the video podcasting codec, just the one for this file, okay? So later in this chapter, I'll teach you how to save this out and use it again as a custom preset if you like. All right, so we haven't done too much to this. We've applied the Apple ProRes 422 codec and we didn't make any changes. And then on this one, we apply the video podcasting codec and we made a couple of changes. Let's go ahead and perform this export. Right now, it's just going to export from my in point to my out point, which works out well, so we don't have to wait too long for this export. But now I'm just going to click Start Batch, okay? And then it's going to go from the current to the active screen, and it's going to go through both of those. And it's actually already done, so you can see those in completed, okay? So today, I exported this job with these 2 settings, and we're going to go to the desktop, which is where those are. All right, so here's my video podcasting file, the one that is at 960 by 540. And then here is the Apple ProRes 422 file at 1280 by 720. The sizes for each of these, let's see, my video podcasting file is 848 kilobytes, and the size for my Apple ProRes 422 is 36.6 megabytes. So you can see that this is quite a bit larger as you would expect from the settings that we applied. All right, so now that you're familiar with the basics, let's move on to some additional compressor features.